What's good in the hood, YouTube? This is Crazy Sarah 71 here bringing another video. Today I'm bringing a video on Uchuu Sentai Kyuranger episode 17. Yes, episode 17 came out a few days ago and I wanted to do a review on it because 17 was actually pretty awesome. It was a filler, but it was better than episode 14, which was like the one at the palace or whatever. This was actually not like amazing, but it was okay. It was, a decent filler. It was definitely not like the best thing ever, but it was much better than episode 14 was, which was the last like real filler that we had. So as far as what happened in this, so the episode was called Light of the Dark Dome, and it was an episode that was pretty good. There were a couple of bits of information that were revealed about certain events that are going on while the main story was happening in this episode that are important, which is good. This also introduced a new Kyotama, similar to how we had the Pegasus Kyotama, so it's another one of those gimmicky ones that, at least so far, we've only had, like, for example, the Pegasus Kyotama, we only had, like, one episode on that. This is another one of those ones where it sort of seems like it's going to be, probably only have a few applications to it, rather than, say, 5 or 6 applications like we usually get. And in other words, by that I mean, like, it's going to be used a lot. It's not going to be used a lot at all, I don't feel. I feel like it's very much so, it's for specific occasions only. So, not bad, but wish it were more useful than just a one-time ordeal. As far as what happens, so we end up seeing Garu and Balance talking to each other. Garu's annoyed because, obviously, in the previous episode, Champ was destroyed saving Stinger, and now he feels like he wants to get revenge on them for what had to happen, and that makes sense. But the thing is that Balance is sort of annoying Garu because Balance is sort of like, just take it easy, no big deal. He said, he mentions the fact that we have 2 of the 3 Kyotama that we need. We have the Pixis and the Vela Kyotama. We still need the Karena, but calm down. We're doing pretty well. We're not in terrible condition here. And at the same time, Garu is sort of like, no, how can you be so chill about this? This is a serious matter and all that, So obviously there is some argument over his lax nature compared to his more aggressive and tough nature that Garu sports. So because of this episode sort of focuses obviously a lot on them, but it does it in a way where it's not like so overemphasized. Like it's kind of hinted at, and it's obviously like a driving force in this episode, but it's not something that's like in your face. There's other things going on that take your focus towards them without having to be up in your face about that being the focus, which is good. I appreciate that aspect of it. It's not too forceful in that sense. So that's what happens there. So then what happens is that Sho ends up talking to the Kyurangers about where they're going to be liberating today, which is some domed enclosure, which if you go in there is supposed to be pitch black. So what happens is that Hammy says she thinks that she'll be able to deal with it, and the thing is that they do the Culet the Culet dance situation, and it turns out that Hammy, Lucky, Garu, Balance, and Raptor are chosen, which is a cool team. And so Hammy uses her Kyotama to dig a hole into the dome to enter in there, which it turns out to be dark. But the thing is that shortly after they enter in there, it turns to light. And what's explained is the fact that because of this dome, 22 hours of the day there is light, and 2 hours of the day there is darkness. And when that happens, that's the only time that people can sleep, really, because due to the magistrate that exists there, he forces them to work 22 hours a day, and if they don't, then they can be attacked and punished for not doing their job by a magistrate known as Shido. Shido as in like shadow, but it's spelled slightly differently. And so what happens is that the reason why they even find this out is because they end up meeting a bunch of workers who are beyond exhausted, look in terrible condition, are ill, coughing, look sickly, in other words. And so because of this, They want them to sleep and all that, but they learn this information and they feel like, how could this be like this terrible creature do this or whatever. And the thing is that this Magistrate has incredibly good hearing, so he is able to. So he suddenly attacks them, but they can't see him, and they even try to transform. And eventually, they each get knocked into different. They each get knocked into different areas. And Lucky first lands on like some soft cushioned material. He feels lucky about that, but then Hammy and Raptor fall on top of him, and then you have Garu and Balance who fall on some garbage. And Garu is from the Lupus system, which is known for their strong sense of smell, like a dog. He's supposed to be sort of like a dog or a wolf or whatever you want to say. And so because of that, when it comes to sound, it's like bad, like disgusting. Not sound, smell. When it comes to smell, because of that, his nose is super sensitive to terrible smell. So because of that, when he smells all this garbage, it's like, ooh, it's awful. So that obviously happens, and Lucky keeps on trying to say mean things about, I forgot to also mention the fact that there is a Kyotama that I mentioned that was going to be a one-time Kyotama for this episode, and that was the Shining Star. That was the Shining Star, I believe. No, the Shining Kyotama, which is the special Kyotama for the episode. And the thing is that they can't get it right away because HQ has to send it down. So because of that, that's what they're waiting for to help them deal with the Magistrate. So things are going on with that, and Lucky gets knocked at least 3 times saying mean things to the guy. And at the same time, we see Raptor and Hammy doing their own thing for a little bit, but more so we see Garu and Balance trying to figure things out. Garu is very much so like, we have to figure out something. We shouldn't just be sitting around while Balance is just kind of sitting in some garbage. And Garu looks at him like, why are you just sitting there? We should work together and all that. It's like, well, it might be better for us to kind of think things out before we go out doing things, because it might be a waste of energy. And he's like, no, we should get going. And so there's this disconnect between the two of them, where one's obviously a lot more head on, while the other one's a lot more strategic. And so that's the obvious situation of conflict between the two of them, which is how their personalities are so contrasting in their way of taking things on. So what happens is we also end up seeing back on the Orion that they're still not being able to get the Shining Kyotama, but eventually it is sent to the ship, and we end up hearing from Kotaro, who we haven't seen in a good number of episodes now. I believe, and so because of this, it's obvious, nice to hear from him, and he says, the training's going well, and they do ask about Champ and Stinger. Champ, we actually get to see an image of him with his lower half basically missing and a bunch of wiring being there, but apparently there's still some tests that need to be done. At the same time, we also see Stinger, who looks like he's in a depression, very upset over what he went through and what state he left Champ in after the battle with Scorpio. So we do get to see a little bit, we get to learn a little bit more about what's going on there. At the same time, we end up seeing, so then after that, now since they have that Kyotama, Rio Commander says that he's going to go down and deliver the Kyotama to them, and he's going to go down with Rio Voyager. Thing is that the tunnel that Hammy made to get into the dome was actually fairly small, so because of that, it's kind of hard for Rio Voyager to really travel in there. He can, just not easily. So that also delays him getting there faster and delivering it more easily. So eventually what ends up happening is that we then go back to that, and we end up seeing that Balance did find a wire which connects to the surveillance camera, and he manages to find the recording of what's been happening from some surveillance footage showing Shido attacking some of the workers in the area. and they end up slowing down the video, and they see that Shido appears from the ground, and they think that's what must be happening. He must be jumping up from the ground. And so eventually what they decide to do is they decide to transform and say mean things to Shido until eventually he starts attacking them. And this continues on for a while. Not much is really successfully occurring until at one point Raptor decides to fly up into the air and begins to attack, which Shido still manages to attack. And Balance notices something, which is the fact that when Shido attacked, he attacked from the roof, which told him that it wasn't coming from the ground, but it must be something else. And they realized that where Raptor jumped from was the roof. So what he realizes is that it must be their shadows. So at that point, they realize that they need to do something about that, because due to the fact that the sun is being blocked by the dome, it prevents the most direct light from coming in and getting rid of most of the shadows, which allows Shido to travel around more easily from shadow to shadow. So there's this whole entire logic behind that. Eventually what ends up happening is that Lucky's told to go and find the shiny Keltama, because the thing is that, see, they can't actually communicate very easily, so they realize that they have to just kind of hope that they can go and get it. So Lucky goes over, finds Rio Voyager coming out of the ground, and he's like, "Whoa, what are you doing here, Commander?" And then at that point what ends up happening is that the Commander says he was going to give him the Keltama. Then we see the other four that are fighting, the Magistrate, Shadow, and or Shido or whatever, and Shido does reveal his appearance, and he looks interesting. And eventually we end up seeing Lucky return, attack Shido, and then he suddenly uses the solar mode of the shining Keltama. The solar mode is the sun mode, which is very cool, and he uses it, which casts a large beam of sunlight around them, which is beaming bright, which makes it so that he cannot escape or travel around at quick speeds to the same extent as he was before. This then leads to Raptor carrying Lucky and using Raptor to act as the sun to cause Lucky to travel around like the sun would, and it helps a lot, and they eventually beat up on him. But this then follows with I believe it's Balance going up into the air and spinning around like holding onto Lucky and just doing this constant spinning rotation until he eventually lets go and throws Lucky at the Consumerez, destroying it and leading to the dome being destroyed, which then causes the sunlight to disappear and make it so that it's nighttime. At that point, when Lucky falls to the ground, the Keltama flips and it turns to the lunar mode. The lunar mode causes him to have like a crescent moon this time, and he ends up using that. And the thing that's really interesting is that it suddenly makes Garo act like a werewolf. So suddenly he becomes a little bit more wolf-esque and tougher, and he's much smarter and much better. And you could see that Balance ended up acting crazy and was willing to do all that crazy stuff of spitting Lucky and acting a little bit more reckless, like Garo's used to being, and Garo ended up becoming a little bit more smart and clever with his moves with the moonlight. So it was very interesting. So it sort of kind of makes me feel like they might use this more, but at the same time it could just be a one-time thing. But this was a better application of something like that than, say, the Pegasus Keltama, which, it didn't really add anything new. It was sort of like a temporary, interesting thing that was kind of added for the time being. So I kind of like this one because of that. And eventually they do destroy that Magistrate, so then he is turned big. At that point, they Balance and Garo decide to join Rio Commander to form Rio Teo. So the two of them become the arms of Rio Teo, and they battle the Magistrate Shido. And then we go back to the Orion, where we see the Kyurangers celebrating the success of their mission, and eventually, Balance and Gar are complimenting each other on their personalities and how they were able to, do certain things during their mission really well, and everyone's just really happy. So eventually we also hear good news, which is the fact that apparently the Pixis Kyotama is working, which means that they can actually track down the Karena Kyotama, which would lead to them being able to get Argo. So that sounds great, but then we get to see something from the villain side of view, referring to Scorpio and Madako. Apparently, Scorpio says, do not let the Kyurangers get the Karena Kyotama, bring it to me, and Madako is instructed to do so. So she's willing to do so, and the episode basically ends there. Following this, as far as what episode 18 looks like, 18 is really one that I'm looking forward to a lot, because it's going to have Uchuu Sentai Deca Ranger, Deca Red, and I think all the Deca Rangers are supposed to be showing up for this, as well as Space Sheriff Gavin. Yes, so we're supposed to be having an episode like that coming up next week, which should be awesome. I can't wait to see it, because apparently we're going to get Dolby Kruger and Sho to interact together, which is just cool because they're both commanders and they're both like animals and all that. It's just cool. I don't know, there's a lot of reasons why I'm looking forward to the episode, and I hope it's good. I don't know if this will actually lead to them getting the Karena Kyotama, or if it will be sort of a filler kind of thing. Actually, I don't know. It might not be. It's hard to really say, but I'm looking forward to seeing what's going to happen. Maybe we'll get the Karena Kyotama, which will mean we'll have Argo pretty fast, if that's true. Again, that might just be them getting it. It might not mean that they're actually using Argo right away, but you never know. As far as other things go, I enjoyed this episode a lot. I think that, it wasn't the best episode ever, but it was definitely one of the better, less interesting. It was definitely the better of the filler episodes that we've gotten so far, because there was some expansion of detail on certain characters and story elements that were important and actually affected the main story, and it wasn't just like complete filler like the Ryoga Palace episode was, where there was nothing to it that was that informative, other than maybe the very ending. But other than that, there's really nothing that new or worthwhile about it. Let me know your guys' opinions, though. What did you guys think? Did you guys enjoy episode 17? What was your favorite part? Are you liking the show as a whole? Are you looking forward to the crossover episode next week, which I am really looking forward to, because I like when they do crossover episodes. And any other theories you guys have. So please remember to comment, subscribe, and goodbye, guys. So till then, guys, I'm Crazy Samurai, and goodbye.